Welcome to the Viking Age podcast, the official podcast of thevikingage.com. We do this every Monday and Thursday night right here at 6:15 p.m. Central Time on the Viking Age YouTube channel. And if you miss it, we have you covered in podcast form the next day on Apple and Spotify. But however you listen, make sure you're liking, subscribing, giving us a good review because we never want you to miss a new episode. My name is Chris Schad. I am a contributor at the Viking Age as well as Zone Coverage to bring me the news. And on your right is my co-host, Adam Patrick, who is the managing editor of the Viking Age podcast. Adam, let's start off with a little bit of wrestling talk here because yesterday was All Out and Maxwell Jacob Friedman returned after basically sitting out the entire summer after a contract dispute. So let's have a little fun with our first question. What do you think is the most shocking return in Vikings history?
It's got to be Randy Moss in 2010, right? I don't think anybody thought that was gonna happen ever again after he was traded. I believe in 2005, 2006 to the Raiders, and of course he went to the Patriots, and then he wound up on the Vikings. Now his second tenure did not last very long, thanks Brad Childress, or maybe thanks to the cafeteria worker that gave him bad food or whatever the story goes. Probably not. But yeah, nobody expected Randy Moss to come back. He did. He did the get your 84 jerseys out. It was great. It was exciting, and then it wasn't. But yeah, there's been some other returns that weren't really as notable, like recently. Everson Griffin. I don't think many people thought he was going to come back, but then he made his way back. Gary Anderson came back after he departed shortly, 2002, I think. There's been a couple guys, but yeah, Randy Moss definitely the most notable to leave and then come back.
I'm lucky I watched the Luke Braun documentary on the history of the Vikings because it gave me a chance to get some better answers. I would say Bud Grant. So he retired, I think it was 82, 83,
yeah.
a little bit after the Metrodome. They had the Les Steckel experiment that
Yeah,
failed. So then he had to come back and eventually handed over the reins of Jerry Burns like he wanted to all along. Chris Dolman, actually another interesting comeback. Vikings traded him away to Atlanta. I believe it was the 1997 season, maybe a little bit earlier, but Dolman goes away. He goes to the 49ers, revives his career, shows back up in 1999 and is a hell of a player. But at that point, he was like 38, 39 years old and he had to retire at that point. But yeah, I mean, there haven't been any real like shocking ones. I mean, if you want to go Mackenzie Alexander, I don't know. Nobody was like, I mean, Moss, I remember the whole like Randy Moss trade going down because I was in college and I was just like, we just traded for Randy Moss and like the excitement and everything else. But I mean, it was probably the same Randy Moss, but it was just a different level of Randy Moss that wasn't good for that team.
I'm surprised you didn't say, we both forgot the most notable, which is the return of Shamar Stephen 2 years ago from, after he left for the Seahawks.
The world's greatest nose tackle.
Yeah. Tom Johnson, Sebastian Thunderbucket or whatever. He did the same sort of thing where
Sebastian Thunderbucket. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, you haven't heard that before?
Sebastian Thunderbucket. Yeah, I've never heard that.
Look up his profile on Pro Football Reference. That's what's next to Tom Johnson's name. Really? Just because his name's so just simple. Somebody gave him a random name. I want to say it was Corey Cove on K-Fan who gave him that nickname. There's him, and then obviously Sean Mannion, who went to the Seahawks briefly last year, and he came back to ruin our lives again for the Vikings. So yeah, there's been plenty of guys that have gone back and forth. A lot of Seahawks and Vikings back and forth for sure.
Well, we go from the unpredictable to the predictable because Peter King dropped his season predictions at Football Morning in America on Monday morning. And he has the Vikings going 11-6, which that would be a win of a season for me. How about you?
I think so. I think they haven't won more than 10 games since 2017. So you got to think that 11 games is definitely good sign, at least that the team's going in the right direction. He made more predictions that probably, aren't as exciting, but 11 wins is, I would say, based on the players that they brought back and the goals that they had, I think that's good enough because I think a lot of people don't think that this isn't the year that the Vikings are kind of like going all in or whatever. I think a lot of people think they're just going to kind of get things sorted out, and then next year will be the year where they kind of just put their foot on the gas pedal and try and see if they can get something out of it.
Well, the good news is that the Vikings are going 11-6. The bad news is it's not enough to win the NFC North because he has the Green Bay Packers finishing at 12-5 and going all the way to the Super Bowl. Uh, for the Vikings, he has them matching up with the Rams. He has the Vikings as the 5th seed in the NFC, which is good. That would mean they're the best wild card team, which I don't know, hang a banner for it, but still, I see. I feel like if the Vikings did that, it would feel a lot better than it did the past 2 years because you feel like that's a positive step in the right direction. And then you think about 2023 and you can find, I mean, do you want a new quarterback? Do you want to draft one?
Yep.
How do you improve this team? It feels
Yep.
like you have a foundation where the last couple of years you had no direction. Of
Right.
course, in this prediction, he has the Vikings losing to the Rams in the first round of the playoffs, but I would be excited, especially if the wild card game is a close game and they don't get completely just blown off the face of the earth. I would be excited about the Vikings heading into 2023 if that happened.
Yeah, and the NFL would be very excited if it was the Vikings and Rams in the first round because they would love to see Kevin O'Connell go against Sean McVay, and that would be all everyone would be talking about the entire week leading up to that game. But yeah, no, I think it's good. It gives you a lot of options. I do kind of wonder, he didn't really mention how they would get to 11 wins. He did mention something weird about Eric Kendricks about how he would finally be viewed as a top 5 linebacker, even though he was an all-pro, like, a few years ago.
I
Uh,
looked into this though because I thought it was weird too, and I started recording my podcast, the Homer Horn podcast, before we went on air here,
yeah,
and I looked it up with Eric Kendricks. I'm like, well, he's a former Pro Bowler. He has one Pro Bowl appearance, and he
yeah.
has one All Pro. That's it. It's kind of weird that he hasn't been recognized perennially as a top linebacker. It was just part of a historic Vikings defense that they rode all the way to the NFC Championship game in 2017.
And he's also an inside linebacker, and I think in the
Mhm.
Pro Bowl, they just group them all together, outside and inside linebackers, so a lot of the outside guys like Micah Parsons and Chandler Jones and all those guys are gonna get the Pro Bowl votes because they get the sacks and stuff over Kendricks. So unless Kendricks is like playing out of his mind like he was in that All Pro season, then he's gonna get a Pro Bowl vote. But yeah, the Pro Bowl is weird because they just group them all together. And then just going back to the predictions, 11 wins. I was just saying how I'm curious to see how like they get to that. They would get to that. Is it a lot to do with Kirk Cousins? Because if it is, then do you extend him even more, or do you do you have a plan no matter what, no matter regardless of how good or bad Kirk Cousins does next season, as far as what you want to do with your quarterback, because that's going to be pretty important to figure out what you want to do with Kirk Cousins moving forward, whether you win 11 games or not.
Yeah. Um, Sorry, I got distracted there just for a moment. But yeah,
Fantasy.
yeah, I know fantasy. Everybody's trying to do fantasy football drafts right now. I got busted on air trying to finish off my guillotine league. I understand it. I
Mine's
got an
tomorrow.
hour.
I just double
I'll
checked.
just yeah, I got an hour. I'll just figure it out here once we're off the air. But the other interesting part here, though, is that he has Justin Jefferson third for NFL Offensive Player of the Year. Wide receiver has won this award in 2 of the past 3 seasons. Michael Thomas won it in 2019, and Cooper Kupp won it in 2021. Prior to this, the last wide receiver to win the award was Jerry Rice in 1993. Now, King has Jonathan Taylor winning the award, but do you think Justin Jefferson has a realistic shot at this?
Yeah, I don't even like not Justin Jefferson. I don't like Jonathan Taylor for the award. I know he did a lot last year, but they just got Matt Ryan, and he's much more, I, not much more, but he's a more reliable passer than Carson Wentz was. And I feel like the Colts used Jonathan Taylor a lot last year to kind of hide some of the weaknesses of Carson Wentz. So, instead of having Carson Wentz pass a bunch, they would rely more on Jonathan Taylor. I don't think they're going to do that again this year. They're still going to use him and utilize him because he's a good player. But I don't think he's going to have the kind of season that I know. I see a lot of Jonathan Taylor going number one in fantasy, and I'm just like, I don't know. It seems like remember David Johnson with the Cardinals and how he had those like I think he had one or two really good seasons, and everyone's like, oh man, this guy, he's just automatic in fantasy. And then he had like 500 rushing yards. I'm not saying that that's going to be, um, who are we talking about? The running
Jonathan
back,
Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Are you drafting a fantasy team on
Yeah,
air like I am?
no. It slipped my mind. Because there's so many players to think of right now as far as fantasy. But yeah, I'm not maybe not as high on him as maybe some others are because of Matt Ryan being there and him being a better passer than Carson Wentz. So I would think that Justin Jefferson has a really good shot at being offensive player of the year. I'm always curious why he doesn't go to a quarterback. Like they play
Because
offense
that's
too, but
reserved for the MVP
I
award.
understand.
Like it
like
shouldn't
like
be,
offensive
but
player is the consolation prize unless you throw like if you're Peyton Manning with the Broncos and you throw like for 55 touchdowns. Yeah. Okay.
like I don't know. You could have made a case for Jonathan Taylor to be MVP if the Colts made the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
Like that's the way I see it. Just he's a beast. Like as somebody who lived in Minnesota all this time and is big into college football, I saw Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin, and you
Right.
know what? The guy was just a horse. Like watching him reminds me of Adrian Peterson, just
Yeah.
as quickly as he can hit the hole. He's got that unicorn athleticism that they talk about. I think Jonathan Taylor could definitely win the rushing title again if he stays healthy. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, that's just kind of how they vote for these things. I mean, quarterbacks are going to win this award. Peter King has Josh Allen winning it. He also has the Bills beating the Packers in the Super Bowl, which I don't know. That would be too close for comfort for me. I don't want the Packers anywhere near the Super Bowl
Right.
because, like, they could just pull one. They could just have like random BS and just pull one out. And I don't know. Maybe at that point we're finally rid of Aaron Rodgers, but it's not worth it being screamed 5 Super Bowls from across the river.
Yeah, and
So
I mean, as good as I think the Bills are going to be this year, I will never pick them not to win the Super Bowl. Just not because I don't want them to win, just because I feel like they're a cursed team as much as the Vikings are. They're like the AFC version of the Vikings, and they both have 4 Super Bowl losses. But a lot of people are high on the Bills. It's scary.
do
I
you
don't
ever
know.
subscribe to the theory that like if you watch I don't know, like the Rays are winning playoff games, right? In baseball.
Yeah.
Like, and the Twins haven't won a playoff game in 18 years. And you go, well, if they can do it, my team can do it. Like, if the Bills win a Super Bowl, you kind of look at it like they shook it. The Broncos were 0-4 in Super Bowls until they finally beat the Packers. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And if Stephon Diggs got a ring, cool. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
Stephon Diggs. Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
Viking fans who might not feel the same way, but I mean, I would love to see Stephon Diggs win a ring with the Bills. Plus, they brought back the red helmets, and those things look sick. Like I'm kind of jealous the
that was
Vikings
a
don't have
tease.
another. Yeah, I mean
I think that was
I'm jealous the Vikings don't have another helmet that they can make.
Yeah.
That look good.
Yeah. I think I get sad maybe once or twice a week about Stephon Diggs still not being in the Vikings just because he's still really good. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's, like does a lot of charity and stuff, and he's really a really good player. Still, I would argue that he's still the best probably route runner in the NFL. So yeah, Stephon Diggs. Yeah, I'd root for him for sure, for sure. But yeah, Bills. I can't pick them to be in the Super Bowl. I just can't.
Well, we'll get away from predictions here and we'll get back to the Vikings here because people can't stop piling on Mike Zimmer. They can't help themselves. It's just like a nervous twitch at this point.
Yeah.
Ty Dunn, who wrote the piece on Mike Zimmer's the end of his tenure, I think about a year or two ago.
Yep.
Started.
It was right after he got fired, I think.
Yeah. All that stuff came out.
Uh-huh.
Now he's kind of writing a follow-up with Kevin O'Connell taking over, and it's a good article, but there's about 1,700 words in that article, and like half of them rip on Mike Zimmer. Did you hear that?
No.
Shit.
What?
Oh, sorry. No, I swear I heard something in my apartment. That's what I was.
You got a ghost in there?
Maybe, I don't know. Here, I'm gonna go check on that super
Okay.
quick and just make sure there's nothing. But let's start it here. Terrence Newman said that countless players dreaded going to work those final years because all the fun was drained out of the organization. It became toxic. It was a trickle effect. Players are getting cussed out like that, then it is going to make a long day for anybody. I guess what do you think about those comments? And I'm gonna go make sure Mike Zimmer is not in my house and like firing off his shotgun.
Okay. I think, he said what he said, but I think it's easier to point the blame at Mike Zimmer, because it's easier to do that than it is to maybe some of these players who look at themselves in the mirror. Listen, Mike Zimmer's coaching style is not for everyone, and when his teams aren't winning, people aren't going to be as willing to buy into his drill sergeant tactics. But he's not the only one to have this style of coaching. I'm going to read you guys who are still here a headline of an article I found about a current college coach who is arguably the most successful college coach of myself and Chris's lifetime. I'll leave out the name, but it goes, Florida assistant calls blank, quote, the devil himself. And who do we think this is about? So, if you have guessed already, it is none other than Alabama's Nick Saban. I would say he's been pretty successful at Alabama and LSU and what was before Michigan State there. He, like Zimmer, is known for kind of having a no nonsense approach to coaching. He has no problem with yelling at his players or coaches to get them to understand what he's trying to get them to accomplish. Hey, he's back. I'm talking
Mike,
about
I'm
another.
sorry about that. No,
I'm talking about another head coach. You all right? Everything all right out there?
I don't know why, but my tools like fell on the floor
Oh, okay.
in the
All right.
I
So
had
a
them up
ghost.
on the kitchen, so I don't know if
A ghost. Well,
yeah.
I'll start over. But I said, these things are coming about Zimmer because it's easier to point the blame. I feel like it's someone else than to maybe for some of these players to look at themselves in the mirror and take accountability because Mike Zimmer's coaching style, it's not for everybody. And when his teams aren't winning, people aren't going to be as willing to buy into his style, his drill sergeant style. But what I was reading to the listeners before you came back was a headline of an article that I found about a current college coach who is arguably the most successful college coach of our lifetime. I'll leave the name out, but it goes like this. So it says, Florida assistant calls blank, quote, the devil himself. Any guesses as to who this is about?
I'm gonna guess it's Nick Saban.
Hey, you got
Yeah,
it. You got
the
it. Nick
guy who
Saban.
wins. Weird.
He's he's been pretty successful at Alabama and LSU and Michigan State or wherever. And he, like Zimmer, is known for having a no nonsense approach to coaching. He has no problem yelling at his players or coaches, just get them to understand what he's trying to get them to accomplish. But the biggest difference with Saban and Zimmer is that Saban gets to pick and choose whatever players he wants on his roster, and a lot of the guys he gets are some of the best, prospects from around the country. Mike Zimmer didn't have that luxury; he had to work with what he got. So in 2020, the Vikings made a lot of cost-cutting decisions, mostly on defense, and it didn't work out very well. They tried to salvage things in 2021 by signing a bunch of veteran defenders that no one else really wanted, and that didn't work out either. So yeah, Zimmer didn't get to pick his players. Saban does, and it's different because one's winning and one's not. And also, people keep talking about how miserable it was for Vikings players to come into work each day. Yeah, it was miserable because they were losing. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's like that everywhere around the league. Do we think that the Jets players were ecstatic to go in to work last year when they were 4-13? No, of course they weren't. Um, and then the article also talked about players being shocked that Zimmer cared so much about people writing about him possibly being fired. Yeah, I think anyone would care about someone writing or talking about them being fired. He wants to do well. He doesn't care if he has guaranteed money or whatever. His main goal for the Vikings was to win. It was always to win. He didn't care about stats or records. We found that out in the last game talking about Justin Jefferson. He just wanted to win. Like, he almost lost an eye because he wanted to win. That's probably why he was so frustrated at the end of his tenure. And, he had a bunch of guys in his locker room who probably didn't have the same passion to win, and that's okay. But the new regime also noticed that, which is why they got rid of 7 of the 11 2021 draft class, because they didn't feel that they were on board for their plans this year. So, but yeah, we get. I think we get it with Zimmer. I feel like this should be the last time that we hopefully have to talk about this. We get it. He yelled at people. He was grumpy. It was time for a change. Fine. No one's disputing that. But we don't need to keep writing about this with like 1 week to go until the regular season. There's a brand new regime, brand new coach, brand new things to write about. We get it. We get it.
I think that's the most frustrating thing, is that this is coming up 6 days to go before the regular season starts.
Yeah.
Like, new coach, new everything, no, but we can't stop dunking on Mike Zimmer. Like, both things can be true. Mike Zimmer probably needed to go. There probably need to be a culture change.
Yeah.
Also, Kevin O'Connell might be bad in some of the areas that Mike Zimmer was good. Like, think about third down percentage. We'll talk about that in a second. Hint, hint. Like, it's finding a system for Kirk Cousins. It's doing a whole bunch of other things. Like, Zimmer succeeded in some ways, and that's why they were successful. Like, O'Connell's going to have his way, but I mean, it doesn't mean that Zimmer's way didn't work. It just meant that it wore out its welcome. And like you said, the Vikings were a 13-win team. Everybody would have nodded their head and been like, okay, this is working. When you're missing the playoffs each of the past 2 years, you start pointing your finger around, and it's easier to fire the coach than the players.
For sure. Yeah, look at I think Belichick's got a similar coaching style, maybe not as, I don't know, intense. Maybe it is. We don't really know because he doesn't really talk a lot about his style, and even players don't really talk that much about it, but he's been pretty successful. But yeah, winning matters. It matters everywhere. And at the end of the day, the Vikings weren't winning or getting to where they wanted to be, so they made a change. But we're gonna see if Zimmer was entirely to blame this year, or if it was a lot of the guys that they kept around.
So a lot of unpredictability going on, not only in my house, but with the Vikings going on this season. I try to give some of my bold predictions over at the Viking Age, 10 bold predictions. It's up there right now for the 2022 season. And I figured it'd be fun if you and I went back and forth and made our own bold predictions for the 2022 Vikings. So, as the host of the Monday episode, I will let the co-host go first, and you can have your first bold prediction.
All right, first prediction I got is, for the first time since 2012, the Vikings will send a kicker to the Pro Bowl.
Oh,
That's right. A kicker, a Vikings kicker is going to go to the Pro Bowl. Greg Joseph has been absolutely on fire this summer. Here's a very important factor. We just talked about not bashing him, but Mike Zimmer is gone. It's pretty easily, you can tell very easily that he had a very not so good impact on the mentality of his kickers. They went through a lot. They went through a lot of kickers, a lot of punters, a lot of long snappers. He just had no time for special teams players. Special teams. Hold on. We didn't even talk about the coordinator who called Mike Zimmer Satan. We didn't even predict who that was. Who do you think that was?
I thought about it. I think it's Norv Turner.
You do, yeah. That's a good. That's
He's got to be the leader in the clubhouse, doesn't he?
A lot of people think it's DiFilippo. I think a dark horse could be Marwan Malouf, because they kind of had a falling out. We know Mike Zimmer doesn't like special teams. Remember that? I think they had like an argument in one game on the sidelines when like somebody had a kick. I think it was after a Cordell Patterson kick return or something.
Yeah,
against the Bears, and they just went at each other.
I think he said, "Why don't you fire me?" And then
he did. So a little dark horse candidate maybe there. But back to our bold predictions. Yes, Greg Joseph to the Pro Bowl. Mike Zimmer's gone. Greg Joseph's been on fire this summer. He's made all 8 of his kicks, including a 58-yard field goal. So yeah, I think he's in good spirits. The special teams coordinator now, Matt Daniels, predicted that Greg Joseph is going to have the best season of his career. So that should probably result in a Pro Bowl.
I think you're right. I think the way that they've handled special teams throughout training camp has been very impressive to me. And it could have been, just kind of how the Vikings didn't really care about special teams the past couple of years, where they were just guys on the back end of the roster. You threw them together and you figured whatever. Matt Daniels seems to have a plan with what he wants, not only at kicker, punter, and all of those positions, but I really think that him and the way that he's handling Greg Joseph is going to produce a better season from him. My first prediction that I have goes on the defensive side of the ball, and I hinted at it a little bit. I think that the Vikings are going to allow an over 40% conversion rate on third down next year, because the Vikings led the NFL with a 35.9% conversion rate allowed since 2014 under Mike Zimmer. Ed Donatell's defense allowed a 40.9% conversion rate in 3 seasons with the Broncos. I don't know if Vic Fangio was running the defense or not, but Ed Donatell's name's attached to it, and he is the new Vikings defensive coordinator. And then Mike Pettin, who looks like Rick Harrison, his defense allowed a 38.2% clip in 3 years with the Packers. The best I can do is 38%. The last Super Bowl winner to have an offense that had a conversion rate under 40% was the 2015 Denver Broncos. So you might look at it and go, well, that's not a huge difference, Chris, but it translates to winning. And especially on Sunday with the Packers coming into town, they're going to want to dominate the time possession. They're going to want to have big plays down the field and wear out that defense. And that plays right into the hands of Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur. So I think that that's going to be one of the most notable things with this new regime is how do they handle themselves on third down?
Yeah. The third down defense, being able to stop teams on third down, even when the Vikings defense has struggled the last few years, they've still been a very good third down defense and they always really were under Mike Zimmer. So that's something that I think we haven't really talked about all offseason is this going to be the same? Because they're in a different formation, they got different guys in there. They're going to be running different looks on third down. So yeah, that's going to be something definitely to pay attention to. And like you said, it's important to the success of the Vikings this year. So number 2, I've got a recent addition to the Vikings, Jalen Reagor from the Eagles. Kind of people are already saying he's a bust, but we'll see. He's only been in the league for 2 years, but I believe he will have more touches than Irv Smith Jr. This season. Now, you might be like, "What? No way." But this includes catches, rushing attempts, punt returns. I feel like the Vikings are going to get more creative with using Reagor than the Eagles did, getting some jet sweeps, maybe have him line up in the backfield sometimes, getting some wide receiver screens, just get him the ball like in space, get him the ball so he can make plays, and just add more to that illusion of complexity or whatever that the Vikings are trying to achieve. I also think there's a good chance that Irv Smith, misses a few games due to injury. That's just how it goes with him, apparently, in his career. And then there's a good chance that Reagor fills in for one of the Vikings' top 3 receivers if they miss time due to injury. So I think Reagor is probably going to have a lot more chances this year than some people might realize, because we're coming off the Zimmer regime where the 4th receiver didn't really matter a whole lot. But I think with this offense, it's going to matter a whole lot more than it did in the past.
Yeah, I mean, people are high on Irv Smith Jr., but I mean, I really wasn't impressed with him either the first 2 years in the league. Then he tears his meniscus. People said he looked really good in training camp, but I wonder how much Kevin O'Connell is going to use tight ends and fullbacks. That's one of the
Yep.
biggest questions coming into Sunday's game against the Packers is, how many times are you going to throw it to Irv Smith? Is he going to be like a focal point in the offense? I don't think so, especially with the depth the Vikings have at receiver and in the backfield. I think Irv Smith might be a lot like Tyler Higbee, who had like 769 yards back in 2019, but in 2 seasons with Kevin O'Connell, he didn't even top 600 yards. Plus, you have him kind of running uphill with coming back from that thumb injury. Can
Yep.
he catch the football
Yeah.
over the first couple of weeks? Like, that's going to be something you have to watch on as well. I have another prediction kind of like that, but it's on the defensive side of the ball. I think that Patrick Jones will have more sacks than Zadarius Smith. And Jones had 6 pressures on 42 pass rushing snaps this preseason. And I'm afraid about Zadarius Smith's back. Like, it cost him basically the entire year last year.
Yep.
Goes to Baltimore, agrees to a deal, doesn't sign it because Baltimore backs out of the deal. Why would they do that? I don't know. It might be the herniated disc in his back. Vikings bring him
Smiled
here.
too much.
Yeah, they too much of a smile. But they bring him here. His contract is basically a 1-year deal, even though it's 3 for 45 or whatever it is there. And even if Smith misses half the season, let's say he stays healthy, but he's got to sit out a couple of games, Jones could be a situational pass rusher, especially when they're moving Hunter and Smith throughout the formation. If they're attacking on the inside or whatever, because they've talked about that. I think that Jones will have a solid season and one that might springboard him for a starting role next year.
Yeah, I can see that totally happening. I think of a lot of situational pass rushers in the past. I think of Everson Griffin. You could even look at Danielle Hunter, which is how this could turn out for Patrick Jones. Danielle Hunter played 16 games in 2016, but he didn't start a single one of them, and he still had 12 and a half sacks. So that could very well be in store for Patrick Jones. He seems really comfortable in this new formation. This new defensive formation, 3-4. So yeah, and then like you talked about the injury uncertainty about Zadarius Smith, even Danielle Hunter. I think Patrick Jones is going to get a lot of opportunities to make some plays, and he looks like he can make those plays. I think they were even pretty high on him last year, but I think did he get hurt last year? Or he just didn't get a lot of playing time. I don't think he did.
Patrick Jones?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't get a lot of playing time. I don't think he was hurt. It was one of those Mike Zimmer things.
He's
but
a rookie.
I think in his case, I think there was some development that needed to be had. Plus, you had Danielle and Everson on the edge, so why would you put him in?
And this coaching staff, the new coaching staff, has been kind of. I feel like they've been talking about Patrick Jones since the spring. So they've seen out of him a lot. So I see him being a factor for sure this year. All right, my last prediction is Harrison Smith. Old Harrison Smith. I think he's the oldest. Is he the oldest player on the Vikings this year? Him or Patrick Peterson? I feel like. Harrison
Smith's 34, isn't he?
He's up there, 33 or 34. He will lead the NFL in interceptions this year in 2022. Now, I say this because Ed Donatel coming over from the Broncos. Each of the last 3 seasons with Donatel as the defensive coordinator, Justin Simmons, Broncos safety, led the team in interceptions. Those two, Simmons and Smith, are often talked about in the same company. And Harrison Smith has had 3 or more interceptions in 4 of his last 5 seasons, and he had 5 in 2020. He only had 1 last year, but I feel like he was probably doing a lot more than he usually does, just running around making up for Bashaud Breeland not covering people and Mackenzie Alexander not covering people. So I feel like he's going to be able to get more back to just being himself, being wherever he is in this defense. And then lastly, Sharp Football Analysis says that the average ranking of each of the passing offenses that the Vikings will be facing in 2022, the average ranking ranks 29th among teams in the NFL. So they'll be facing some pretty simple passing offenses this year. So yeah, Harrison Smith, he will lead the NFL in interceptions this season.
Well, in Kevin O'Connell's introductory press conference, one of the guys that he mentioned was Harrison Smith by name, and one of those players that could contribute to the illusion of complexity.
Yep.
My last prediction is, I don't know if it's really bold or off the beaten path or whatever, but I'm just going to speak it in existence. Vikings are going to win a playoff game in 2022. I think their schedule opens up enough that they can make the playoffs, whether it be as one of the wild card teams or a division champion. And the NFC is wide open. I know Peter King had the Saints as the number 1 seed, which is
we didn't even talk about that.
That is bonkers, by the way. Like he has the Saints, Jameis Winston coming off a torn ACL, Michael Thomas coming off an ankle injury. Love Chris Olave. Don't get me wrong there. They're going to have Alvin Kamara for the full season. I mean, there's a lot to like, but Sean Payton's not there anymore. Plus, they have to deal with the Bucs in their own division. So, I mean, 12-5 in New Orleans just seems a little high. But I mean, I could totally see it. Like some teams we're going to look at some team in the NFC and go, what the hell? Like, how are they good? Like
I keep feeling that way about the Giants. I don't know why. I keep feeling that way. Just
I like Brian Daboll, man.
Yeah, I like Brian Daboll a lot. Just Daniel Jones is a huge question mark. But I just keep feeling that way. Like they're going to be some team that wins a lot of random games, and we're going to be like the Giants. But yeah.
And we talked about it before. Every team in the NFC has some kind of issue right now.
Yeah,
like the Vikings are like the rare team. Like the Vikings' issue is that they still hate their old head coach. Like that's it. I mean, maybe you have center position. Maybe that's their issue.
I'd say that's a pretty big issue.
It's a very big issue, especially with Kenny Clark and Jordan Davis in the first 2 games.
Yeah,
but I mean, every team's got an issue right now. And I mean, if the Vikings can iron theirs out enough where they can make a run, I could see them winning a playoff game. They haven't won 2 playoff games in a season since 1987, since Darren Nelson dropped the ball in the end zone in Washington. So
when I was born.
I don't know. Yeah.
My whole lifetime, they've never won 2 playoff games.
Yeah. I was alive, but I wasn't watching the game. Maybe I was. Maybe
so 87. So that means 88 was the playoff game. So I guess only in the first year of my lifetime have the Vikings won multiple playoff games because they've either had a bye or they've won 1 wild card game and lost in the divisional round. So super, super great stat. Love those Viking stats. And then we're the winningest team with no Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Great. Hang the banner. Yeah, that's all I got for predictions. That's all you got?
Yeah, that's all I got. I mean, I got 7 more over at the Viking Age. None of these are actually in that article. So I mean, this is fun. Patrick Jones one is, but other than that, I mean, I said Dalvin Cook will lead the league in 20 plus yards of run. That whatever happened in my basement has got me a little shook right now. So if I'm stumbling over words, that's it. I thought I heard something like a motor running or something else. I don't know.
There was one prediction.
Sleep with the lights on tonight, I guess.
Yeah, there was one prediction that I was like, oh, really? Okay. Let's see. Yeah. You did say Patrick Jones will have more sacks, so that one is in here. This one, just another sneak preview in your article on the VikingAge.com. Patrick Peterson will be replaced in the starting lineup. I thought that was very interesting, just based on their depth. I'm like, he's gonna have to play real bad for that to happen. But I could see it too. I could totally see it.
Well, if he gets hurt too, like we said, he's 32 years old.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing with him saying, "Well, I couldn't get in a rhythm because they weren't throwing it at me," like that just seemed weird.
Yeah, they haven't been throwing your whole career.
Yeah. So I don't know.
You want them to throw more at you?
I'm not trying to be negative guy here, but I mean, I wasn't really impressed with Patrick Peterson in his first season in Minnesota.
Not last year, no.
He
was okay.
And I mean, he got hurt. That was part of the reason. But I mean,
he was solid.
If he would have went somewhere else, I would have been like, oh my God, what will we do? Remember, he took a 50% pay cut to come back here. And he says a whole bunch of people called him, but it seems like he's very good at marketing himself.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's the podcast, whether it's the, free agency or whatever, he's very good at establishing his brand, which is good.
Sure.
Make that money, man. But
for sure. He's definitely got a career as an analyst or something after football, for sure. He's been setting that up for years. And yeah, you go to his Instagram and he's got check out these new peanuts that are, these are delicious. And it's like, okay, you make millions of dollars. Do you really need to do these commercials? But he probably enjoys it a little bit.
You know what Vikings fans need? These nuts.
Well,
on that note,
I was going to bring up Kirk Cousins. He also likes to do the commercials with what's the local pizza place that he does?
Pizza Ranch.
We
got one in my new hometown.
Oh, there you go. And he did the Best Buy commercial too, recently when he was like, Oh my god! Like it's terrible acting, but it's Kirk Cousins. You can't expect the best from him. Whoops. On that note,
that's all the time before we get bombarded with angry Kirk Cousins fans. That's all the time we have for the Viking Age podcast. We do this every Monday and Thursday night at 6:15 p.m. Central Time, right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe, so you never miss a new episode. For Adam Patrick, I'm Chris Schad, and we'll see you on Thursday night.
oh yeah.